Welcome. We're in deep wank news. This is NEWSPASTY.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has delivered opening remarks at the UN General Assembly, focusing on climate change, global inequality and the war in Ukraine.
Oh, climate change, global inequality and the war in Ukraine. So, what we got? Climate change, global inequality created by exactly those people, and the war in Ukraine created by exactly those people. Wait a minute, they've all been created by exactly those people. There's something wrong here.
Guterres blamed climate change for the recent catastrophic flooding in Libya.
They do this though. Gutierrez, all of them. They can do it. They can do as much as they like. Oh, this flooding is from climate change. How can you prove that? Because all of the people government funds to prove it show us stats that we don't understand, and they manipulate so much. And there you go, computer modeling can find whatever you want. Hey, and we fought climate change.
And urged rich countries to phase out fossil fuels.
What is it? Oh my God! Phase out fossil fuels. Have you seen how little energy you can get from other forms of fuel at the moment from recyclable stuff? It's really small. This is all they know. It's not going to happen as quickly as possible. And when it does, it's going to actually create more damage rather than less damage. You see, all of this mining minerals and stuff, it just all of the damage gets offset, or a lot of the damage gets offset to countries full of black people who will have to work in terrible conditions all day with cuts and bruises all over them from the moment they're 5 or 6, maybe even younger, banging stones and trying to get minerals out and poisoning themselves in chemical filled waters. For everybody, they're doing it for everybody. They're God's children.
He also urged rich nations to do more to boost the economies of developing countries. Addressing the war in Ukraine, he said the UN would not give up on efforts to revive a Black Sea grain deal. Well, US President Joe Biden...
Oh, look at that picture they got. That was when Joe Biden did a little poo every time. Actually, I think he's like a rat. He's constantly urinating as he walks.
Addressed the assembly a short while ago, and he said the world must not back down in its support of Ukraine.
This guy's hair. I mean, look across at the presenter, Mr. Deep Wank himself. Look at that hair. It's a carefully coiffured. It's got slick across the top. He must walk into a place and a lady who's done her hair really heavily will go, oh, he's done his hair. Load. He loves himself like I love myself. If your hair looks that good, you got to be a narcissist. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'm basing narcissism on hair.
Russia believes that the world
will
grow weary
and
allow it to brutalize Ukraine without consequence. But
oh, look at this. Look at this young global stripper here. Yeah, this is young global stripper number 665. Yeah, he didn't make it all of the way. He looks like he could be a bit. You could put horns in him and stuff, but if he played a role like that, he'd be like Lucifer's grandson's second cousin twice removed, rather than an actual member of the evil family, the properly evil family. He'd be a dysfunctional evil, deep wank evil. Anyway, this guy Zelensky, don't trust him.
Ask you this: if we abandon the core principles of the United States to appease,
it's like an MMA match. You get to watch all the competitors.
He's an aggressor. Can any member state in this body feel confident that they are protected? If you allow Ukraine to be carved up, is the independence of body feel confident?
Wait a minute. I
gotta ask you this.
Ask you this.
If we abandon the core principles of the United States to appease an aggressor,
if we abandon the core principles of the United States so is he talking from the point of the United States, or is he talking to the United Nations? And he should have said United Nations, the core principles of the United Nations, because the Russians don't care about sticking to the core principles of the United States or abandoning it because they've never, you know, that's not something they have to worry about, is it? So the core principle, well, actually, it probably is just due to family lines and heritage and rich people and all that. But still, on the surface, at least from just someone who's not going to get too deep into this, apart from a deep wank, obviously, this is all deep wank. The Russians aren't going to care about American lifestyle and American choices.
Can any member state in this body feel?
Can any member state in this body? He doesn't know what he's saying because someone's speaking in his ear and he's just repeating it.
Confident that they are protected. If you allow Ukraine to be carved up, is the independence of any nation secure?
But that's exactly what America's done over and over again. And in actual fact, that's kind of what they did back in 1989 when they had already started putting pressure in the East to see coups happen and revolutions and the color revolutions funded by an NGO army that flooded in after the fall of Soviet era political class. And so what happened then? What happened then? Well, the Americans moved in the first place was Czechoslovakia, and within, 3 years or 2 years of independence, because I think it was 1989 they argued for independence. I don't think they got independence or their own outside the revolution. The revolution might have been 1989. I think it might have been 1989. And then I think it was 1992 that they split, the country split in two. That's what happens. It's what happens all over the place. If the problem is with Ukraine is a large Russian contingent on the Russian side because it's Russia, really, isn't it? Oh, and then they say, "Oh, it's Ukraine," so then they can cause conflict and they can have a reason for there to be war backwards and forwards. But it's not true. It's not true.
I'd respectfully suggest the answer is no. We have to stand up to this naked aggression today and deter other would-be aggressors tomorrow. That's why the United States, together with our allies and partners around the world, will continue to stand with the brave people of Ukraine as they defend.
He's standing alongside the brave people like Soros. Yay, go house to house with the Nazis. Yay, for the Nazis.
Their sovereignty and territorial integrity and their freedom.
He didn't get out most of that, but I didn't get out most of it. See, I stopped and was like, he didn't get out most of that. And then I did the same thing, but I'm not the president of America speaking at the UN, am I? Oh, am I?
Well, DW Chief International Editor Richard
like
Walker has been
really
following all the events there in New York and followed the Joe Biden speech here with me a little earlier. So, Richard, what was your main takeaway from Biden's speech?
Well, I think maybe
Biden might be a little bit senile now and had a little bit of trouble speaking.
Most interesting thing, or the comparison that I would draw between previous messages that we've had from Biden at the UN General Assembly last year in particular is, although we just heard that strong message on Ukraine, that the Ukraine war is a principle on which the rest of the world cannot back down. It cannot simply allow Russia to kind of wait out this conflict.
He said it can't let the principles of the United States fall to the wayside, which the global community wouldn't care about. Or was that a mistake because he's senile? You've got to decide, is it one or the other? False dichotomy.
Grind Ukraine down and succeed there, that the world has to stand against that. And yet it was very much reduced in terms of its prominence within his speech compared to last year. Now, last year, of course, September 2022, that was,
September, what? How did you say September there?
Compared to last year. Now, last year, of course, September 2020.
September?
Reduced in terms of its prominence within his speech compared to last year. Now, last year, of course, September 2022.
September 2022.
That was, just 7 months into the war. The war was still kind of fresher. And on that occasion, Joe Biden, in his speech, I counted...
Wait a minute. There's little bits coming up at the bottom. This guy is counting Joe Biden and what he's doing because actually listening to the speech doesn't make any sense. but Biden says US working to make AI technology safe. Oh my God! What they not? They're working to make. Oh, so doublespeak. It's all doublespeak. They're working to use it for military technology to make it the opposite of safe. Oh, and they don't understand what they're doing, unleashing a beast like that.
12 mentions of Ukraine, 19 mentions of Russia during the course of the speech. This time around, it was very much a kind of more compact message embedded within the speech, but a speech that was much more wide-ranging. And
yeah, because they're getting away from supporting Ukraine because the Ukraine conflict is dying now, and they're gonna have a peace or whatever, aren't they? You're gonna have to capitulate part of eastern Ukraine to Russia. You know they're gonna have to.
I think that reflects a consciousness on behalf of the United States, but also on behalf of other countries in Europe, that they feel that the rest of the world is thinking there's a risk that the Ukraine war is dominating the global agenda disproportionately compared to other issues facing the world, for its climate.
CIA driven war. I can imagine Victoria Newland is going, ah! She's listening to Deep Wank News. She's going, ah! There's no way. Don't. You cannot. Don't, please. Please don't take away my Ukraine war. What will I do then?
Change, whether it's development, whether it's hunger. The West would say, well, the
neocons are pressurizing us into doing this and investing more money into it. So there you go.
Ukraine war plays into a lot of those crises. But I think we saw from Biden there a consciousness that to kind of slightly reduce the prominence of the Ukraine war.
A slightly reduced consciousness. That's what we see from Biden nowadays. It's like, you are quite right. A slightly reduced He didn't say the words in the right order, but he said the right words. A slightly reduced consciousness.
But of course, we're going to be hearing from Ukraine's own president in the next couple of hours, Volodymyr Zelensky. It'll be very interesting to see how he is developing his message to the rest.
Yeah, Vladimir, how he's developing his message. What, with the neocons? They just have a load of American neocon advisors come in and say, okay, we'll write the speech for you and say the things, and you hit the marks, and that's all you do. Now, lights, camera, Vladimir Zelensky. Globalism.
Of the world, a very big
That's
opportunity
him sucking
for
a
him,
globalist
of course, to
penis.
talk to the assembled world leaders there.
Well, you mentioned some of the big topics that Biden spoke about, climate change being one of those. And of course, in the United States, he's been a big advocate for change within industry, for example. And tell us a little bit more about what he said about climate change and what needs to be done.
Yeah.
About climate change and what needs to be done. Oh, come on. Oh, my God. What is he saying that needs to be done about climate change? And don't tell me it's give more power to the globalists, introduce all things sustainable development goals, the SGs, just carve up the land, the sea, everything into little parcels and ruin them all.
Well, I mean, we can perhaps just quote just one clip from his speech where he said that what we've seen, he drew the connection, which Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, also did, linking in with recent disasters, like, for instance, what just happened
His name's Dick Walker. Dick Walker. He's a Dick Walker. He's a literal Dick Walker. Oh, this guy on Deep Wank News is a Dick Walker News is Dick Walker News. This is his news station. It's Dick Walker.
Very recently in Libya, saying that these are snapshots that tell what he called an urgent story of what awaits us if we fail.
Floods, weather's phenomenon, things that happen all throughout history. These are different signs of something else. Obviously, something that suits our agenda and allows us to be in control and take over everything, the entire world. Thank you.
Fail to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and begin to climate-proof our world. So I think a pretty strong rhetorical message there from Joe Biden, connecting to the disasters that the world is seeing.
But none of this, but we got to really talk about this. This is Dick Walker News here. This guy's dick walking all night long. Can you think about it? We got a problem, haven't we? We've all got a problem because Biden isn't the one making these speeches at all. They're just not. He's just, people are writing all this stuff for him. They record it for him. They put it out for him. He stands there often, I think, with earpiece in, and he repeats the words that are being said to him. What they're giving him to keep him sentient or keep him up, it must be crazy drugs. This is like nothing you've ever seen. This is a true puppet president. This is a president who's not in control of his mental faculties anymore. He is repeating, he is hoping, he's making mistakes all the time. We're entering a different world. This is not a world of politics. This is a world where we're seeing behind the curtain, and the organ grinders there. Dang da dang da dang. I am the wizard. I am the wizard. Da dang da dang da dang.
Now, to this need, not just to ramp up renewable energy, but also to cut the dependence on fossil fuels. And in some international fora, like at the G20 just recently, there was talking up of renewables, but there wasn't this focus on the need to actually cut fossil fuels at the same time as ramping.
Because even if you increase renewables, you'll only be able to take away about 2% or 3% of the fossil fuels, because fossil fuels are so much more efficient and easy to source and cheaper than all of the rest of the recyclable stuff. Of course, it's like that. We know it's like that. The technology isn't good enough yet. It will be maybe in the future. But for that, you'll need to mine loads of minerals. You know, we need to do that. Oh, black people in the ditch. Black people in the ditch. And anyway, they know they're not going to do this. These messages are going to be out there. You know, oh yeah, we gotta do all of this. We gotta take away fossil fuels. Okay, you're not taking away, and you're not taking away fossil fuel. What do you mean it makes you loads of money, and you haven't run out, even though they said they were going to run out? I don't understand.
Up renewables. So that is in part, I think, a coded message to countries like Saudi Arabia, like Russia, that have been blocking that kind of language on fossil fuels in international fora, saying actually fossil fuels absolutely have to be at the heart of the agenda of dealing with climate change.
Well, Richard, as you've mentioned, there were...
Fossil fuels have to be at the heart. Now, why do they have to be at the heart? Because the agenda goes around them. So you want to stop people, you take away fossil fuels, there's not going to be the replacement by electric vehicles, so people won't be able to travel anymore. They just won't be able to get backwards and forwards. So what does that mean? Think about it. What does that mean? They want you driving less, so they want you driving slower. They don't want you leaving this very small area, because this very small area is easy to charge cars, keep people within their areas, stop them traveling outside, keep them under control, keep them monitored, keep them getting their data, keep surveilling them. What do you think this is? Yes, it's bad.
Many issues brought up by Joe Biden, one being artificial intelligence. We'll speak a little bit more about that, but first, let's actually take a listen to what Joe Biden had to say on that topic.
Oh, my God.
Emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence.
Go on, Joe.
Hold both enormous potential
Hold both enormous potential
and enormous peril.
enormous power.
We need to be sure they are used as tools of opportunity, not as weapons of oppression.
Not it's exactly what they're going to do. So, I mean, we've entered into double wank now, haven't we? This is proper double speak. So double wank comes out really like the deep wank channel, double wank, Dick Walker. They're all there. And double wank, this double speak. Oh, it's not weapons of mass destruction or whatever. But that's exactly what they're going to use them for. They're going to use them to be weapons of war. That's what they're going to use them for, of control.
Not as weapons of oppression.
It is going to be weapons of oppression. Of course, it's going to be weapons of oppression. That's exactly what AI is. What AI makes you think you don't have to do things anymore because you can get a computer to do it, and then boom, you're oppressed because you no longer have the knowledge of how to do things, and so you have to go to other people, and that means you rely on other people all the time, and they have built the structures around you. You are oppressed.
Together with leaders around the world, the United States is working to strengthen rules and policies so AI technologies are safe.
It looks like his eyes gonna close and he's gonna fall asleep halfway through. So AI technology is safe
before they're released to the public.
Before they're released to the public. AI technologies are safe before they're released to the public. What? Do you understand what AI is and how it controls? This is just double speak lies. They all know. Everybody in this room knows that this is lies.
To make sure we govern this technology, not the other way around.
It is the Soviet Union, isn't it? All these people in a state of hyper-normalization. All these people, it's just like the Soviet Union over again. It's amazing. Completely amazing.
Having it govern us. And I'm committed to working through this institution and other international bodies and directly with leaders around the world, including our competitors, to ensure we harness the power of artificial intelligence.
To make sure we harness the power of artificial intelligence. Oh my God. So embarrassing. Come on, leader of the free world or whatnot.
For good, while protecting our citizens from its most profound risk. It's going to take all of us. I've been working on this for a while, as many of you have. It's going to take all of us to get this right.
Well, Richard, obviously AI has been...
Always combined together to bring safe AI and develop military AI. Yeah, it was it was talking to Dan Fournier on the NEWSPASTE podcast the other day. He was saying 175 million IP addresses came online suddenly, were created by the Department of Defense and handed over to this private enterprise as Biden took office. There is loads going on. These guys are developing weapons of war. When they talk like this, you know the opposite is happening. You know it.
In the headlines, let's say, quite a lot over the past year or two. Many concerns as well, which of course he mentioned there. Tell us, what did you make of what he had to say on this? Is there anything new, really?
Well, I mean, obviously there are no specifics there, but I think it's certainly one of the major issues that the world needs to be facing up to at the moment. And if you draw parallels,
Dick Walker, parallel dicks.
Parallels are drawn to the emergence of nuclear weapons after the Second World War, and the fact that eventually the United States and Russia managed to come to arms control agreements where both sides...
They're gonna give this. No, dick walking here, mate. Stop it. Okay, right. They did come to agreements, but they come to agreements by leaking the weapons technology, because by the late 1950s, Kissinger had written a nuclear war and foreign policy, and they had taken his thinking on board as the #1 thoughts surrounding the nuclear era, and the policies that should be applied and the potential for war. And Kissinger had gone into the CFR and gamed out, before writing this, had gamed out in the Council on Foreign Relations all of the different potential outcomes, and had decided that limited perpetual warfare was the best outcome. So John Foster Dulles stood up a year later, and he made, I remember I did I think it was a Newshound on this, where John Foster Dulles stood up and said, what we want to do is we want to look at Mr. Kissinger's teachings and say, hey, Russia, you've got your big nuclear weapons and we got our big nuclear weapons, but let's not play with those. let's play with smaller nuclear weapons. If you have smaller nuclear weapons, if we have smaller, then we can play the nuclear game and start attacking each other nuclear, then we can go into a war again. But we can't go into a war while we're just using big nuclear weapons. And we can't agree not to use big nuclear weapons if Russia's being scary and waving their big nuclear weapons. So what was decided eventually after Herman Kahn wrote on thermonuclear war, and the Hudson Institute had gamed out further nuclear war policy and strategy, they went into a new era where they started leaking the weapons. The Americans were leaking the nuclear weapons technology to countries that would be surrounding Russia, which would mean that if they used a big nuke, then there would be other big nukes around that would be used. So what was it, Big Baby, I think it was called, or something like that, or I can't remember what it was called, but it was the Indian bomb that went off, I think it was 1974. That shook things, but all that China had already got it, got the nuclear weapons. And all of this is like, oh, well, you hear behind the scenes, there was one minister with Pakistan, because India was looking for the nuke. Pakistan was desperate to get the nuke. So Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in 1972, I think it was, started up the nuclear program for Pakistan, and Kissinger was pretending out loud, they were saying out loud in places that, and having places like the UN say, oh, Pakistan shouldn't have nuclear weapons. At the same time, they were supplying them with different type of nuclear technology behind the scenes because they've been proliferating. So now I've told you that, let me explain something. They're saying the same dynamics exist for AI, and it does. So think about that. So they develop an interesting form of AI that does certain things, and then the Americans develop another form of AI that does certain things, and then they attack each other. Yeah, well, they know that there'd be a war between two, and they don't want that, so they got to get other people to have a bit of this technology too, and the same thing will happen, the proliferation, until you can't control it, but everybody's too scared to use it. But then AI isn't a physical warfare, or can be, but isn't, or it can lead to that, but it isn't the physical warfare that we're used to. It'll be something else. It's like pretend creatures are doing stuff and saying stuff to us, and we can't tell the difference between humans and computer anymore. It does seem to suggest to me that if we go the same way as they went with nuclear technology, where they had to proliferate it to be able to stop a war ending happening between the two great powers, they had to proliferate the technology, then eventually I can't help but to see humans getting really, really wary of all technology and thinking they may have to completely destroy AI for the safety of humanity. Because eventually this stuff is going to be so scary you can't believe. And that's why there's a race. It's an arms race. Don't be naive about it. But remember the history you're told about the previous arms race that this is comparable to. That story you've only got half the knowledge on, because they've hidden a lot of it.
Sides managed to put limits on their own nuclear arsenals in the name of stability, and whether similar agreements are necessary for the much more nebulous world of artificial intelligence in the military sphere. But of course, the artificial intelligence has implications not just in the military, but in so many spheres.
Basically, the more you push it and the more you create it, the more out of control it becomes. This is something where you no longer have control, because an artificially intelligent computer now has control. Doesn't happen with nuclear warfare. It was humans deciding these things. This is this is outside humanity. So you know what that can end up? Humanity could be the threat. We all know this.
Some regions are actually ahead of the United States here. The European Parliament, for instance, has already brought in legislation beginning to deal with this issue. But I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about it. And Antonio Guterres as well, the Secretary General of the United Nations, also mentioned this, and he referred to the fact that he first mentioned this several years ago, before it was really hitting the headlines. But a massive challenge, and if you consider the fact that the arms control agreements between the US and Russia over nuclear weapons have basically all withered and been abandoned, that doesn't give a huge amount of hope that the world is going to find a way in its very, very divided state now to deal with an issue that is inherently so nebulous and difficult to tackle.
Okay, no, that's not completely true. You see, there's a reason. There was a big change, and that came down to the standoff. You see, that standoff between Russia and America was the standoff between America, Europe, and the Soviet Union. So America and Europe together, and the Soviet Union. Now, Herman Khan saw America and British as being basically all on the same side, and the Europeans as being part of that, and it would be beneficial to the Americans and the British if the Europeans were permanently part of that. And that's what they wanted to do, because that would outweigh the game. The Soviet Union would no longer be in control. They would no longer have the bigger hand. They would be these guys who have the bigger hand. However, that's not the way Europe wants it. They don't want to be owned by America, but they've had to be basically infiltrated by the American intelligence. The reason why the arms treaties, all of these arms treaties were left to wither is because, do you know what a good way to look at this is? And we'll do it now. Just after we watch this, I'm going to show you another video, and you're going to say, oh, wow. But basically, after the 90s, something stopped, which showed the world that the atomic era had come to an end, and people were no longer in awe or thinking that they were going to use nuclear weapons against each other. There's talk that they've been trying to ramp up the fear that could change, but it did change. It changed in the 90s. It stopped. They realized, however much we test these out, we don't come to a different conclusion. And it was all about the testing.
International editor Richard Walker, you'll be with us following all the events from the UN General Assembly today. Thanks, Richard.
So, I'm going to mute the actual video, but this I sped up a 15-minute video that's online, and it's, as you see, you should be able to see on there, this is every nuclear weapon to be exploded on Earth, and we can talk about this in context to what was happening and how nuclear technology developed and when it stopped, and the whole idea of needing treaties and stuff started to change. And you'll see how it happens. So, this is every nuclear weapon to be exploded on Earth. And you can find this on YouTube. So those are the first ones, as you see. And you'll see there's a flag up top which show the first ones tested were the original ones by the USA. And then you have the Bikini Atoll tests that are going on over there. And then the USSR. So here we go. Let's see, 1951 we are on now, but the USSR has now done their first test of a nuclear weapon, and the Americans have already done 17. But of course, they're going to catch up. So you can see through the 50s, the race keeps going. By this point, British have got in. They've done 3 tests, 18 for the Soviets, and the Americans, of course, winning by far in the nuclear Olympic medals by 1955. But things are going to change in the 60s, you'll see. So they're still testing, but there's some really big explosions. And in somewhere around here, there you go. I think it was about there. There you go. See these big ones? I think, not sure, maybe it was a little bit later, but it's around this time that Russia set off the biggest nuke so far. So maybe it was in the 50s. Can't quite remember now, but they set off the biggest nuke so far. They'd already been going that way, and they set off the biggest nuke they could possibly do. It scared everybody. It was like the peak of the testing. But if you look at the date here, I pause it for another reason. By this point, France have got 4 nukes tested, 21 for the UK, 101 for the USSR, and America 198. Now, there's only a certain amount you can learn from nuclear tests, from testing out atomic and nuclear bombs, or just nuclear bombs, because atomic bombs are still nuclear material. It is only a certain amount you can learn, and once you've gone past, say, 50, 60 tests, and you're basically just counting stats. So the difference between 101 and 198 are not as relevant as you think they may be. It's not just because they've run 198 extra tests doesn't mean that they're extra 100 away from understanding, or like 97 away from understanding what was really how to use this technology. This is all about them testing new boundaries, or trying to test new boundaries. But this 1961 is important because it's the year on thermonuclear war gets produced, and they start thinking about this and mutually assured destruction, and they're going to signal you. This is going to be loads. You see, look at this, it goes out of control. All through the 60s, they have to show each other. And look how much, look out there. They're just constantly in America. Let's go back a little bit so you can see. In America, in that region, in the deserts of Nevada or whatever, I don't know, Arizona, I think it was the Death Valley or whatever, maybe. They're testing out loads of nuclear weapons. They are testing out. They like slowly brought the nuclear testing closer and closer to American soil itself. But by this point, you've got to understand the ridiculous nature of nuclear weaponry, because there's lots of people who think that nuclear explosion happens and the whole world's done, or a few nuclear explosions happens and the whole world's done. Well, look, by 1965, there had been almost 1,000 nukes gone off. Well, 700 nukes gone off. China just started. Down at the bottom there, you see China's just got their first one in 1964. I think they got their first one. So they've come into the fold. So there's been 680 nukes gone off in this period. That's a lot of nukes, and the world has not been destroyed. Though when they say global warming and stuff like that, what was worse for global warming, do you think, or was climate change, all of this stuff? Do you think setting off loads of nukes all over Earth, like thousands? Because we're in 1965. We're already at 600. What do you think the end result's going to be? How many nukes do you think have gone off in the UK, in the world? So here they go. So through the 60s, you see they don't stop. Everybody's going at it. 7 now for China, 31 for France has taken over Britain. USSR and America are just doing a test every month, maybe every 2 tests a month, 3 tests a month or something. It's going out of control. So by this point, we're up to 1979. We're coming into the 80s, and how many in total? Well, this is one of the amazing things, is that there's a lot of nukes gone off now. 1,554 nuclear weapons had been exploded by 1979. Nuclear tests. Some of them are going to be small, and some of them massive. Some of them the biggest bombs that's ever gone off on Earth. Is the Earth destroyed? On 1,554, and it's 1979. So you'd expect a lot more, but you'll see something happen here. So this is 80s. This is Reagan. They're still adhering to the same structure, but we're about to come to the fall of the Soviet Union. 1986 comes by, 1987, 1988, and here we go. We got the fall of the Soviet Union, and things change once the Soviet Union has fallen. So by this point, you've gone up to 1,973 nuclear tests on Earth by 1989. That's crazy. But look, 1990, 1991, and now we're at 2035, 1993. See that? That looks like India testing. Some more down in the Bikini Atoll, but it basically stops. Look at this. This Pakistan gets on it. Finally, they'd been trying, and India and Pakistan doing a little bit of testing. A little bit in Africa too. This is showing, this is a run through between 1945 to 1998. So let's have a look at that again. To 1945 and 1998. So by the time it got to 1998, we go back. See that? You see the scores on the boards there. And it went quiet really after that. There's no point. So what's the point of treaties if people aren't going to use nukes anymore? And why aren't they using nukes anymore? Well, new technologies are rising. New technologies are rising. They need to invest in new technologies. Now let's look. Recap. 1945 to 1998. These are all the different countries. Soviet Union, that's all their tests. Look at America. Look at where they set them all off. So you get to see where they were all set off. And the numbers on the boards. And a concerned human. The YouTube channel is a concerned human to watch at. Very interesting, though. I think it brings new light to understanding how AI technology will also work. They'll do loads of testing all around the place, and it's not the same. You can't control it in the same way. It's all pasty. Exploding pasty, yes, but pasty nonetheless.